Bond Counsel, Mr. David and Jim Prada and John, as well as our attorney, Sharif, I'm hoping you guys to do a quick to the point so we can.
We got that message. Thank you. Good evening, and thank you again for the opportunity to present this information to you about the district's intention to file a bonding capacity waiver. My name is David Leifer with K&N Public Finance, the district's financial advisor. Lisa Lee Wells with Nixon Peabody, bond counsel. John Armstrong also with K&N. Jeff Barada with the district's senior underwriter for Piper Jaffray, and also in the room Don Backstrom, co-managing. I'm sorry, Vince. I'm sorry, Vince McCarley with Backstrom McCarley, co-managing underwriter. So I have a presentation that I'm going to walk through very briefly, and then we'll be available to answer questions if you have any. Can I start with page 1? I guess I do this. There we go. On page 1, we've outlined a couple of key relevant sections of the Education Code, 15106, which provides that a unified school district may only issue general obligation bonds up to 2.5% of the assessed value of property within the district. Also, we highlight section 33050 of the Ed Code, which allows the State Board of Education to waive any provisions of the Ed Code following a public hearing on the matter. And then below, we provide a history of the 4 waivers that the district has received previously in connection with 02 Measure D, 05 Measure J, 2010 Measure D, and 2010 Measure E. And you see with the 05 Measure J, the expiration date on that is May of 2014. That's going to be relevant later to what the district intends to do with this waiver application. On the next page, a little bit about the requirements from the State Board of Education in terms of the application. We need to submit, the district needs to submit and complete an application prior to getting any waiver approval. Staff wants typically 10 to 12 weeks at the State Board of Education with that application before they'll consider it. The district's board must hold a public hearing and adopt an authorizing resolution prior to submitting the waiver application. The district must consult with its collective bargaining units and the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee prior to submitting the waiver application. And this presentation satisfies that requirement with respect to this body. We've listed here a couple of the things that the waiver must include, the rationale, that the waiver application must include, the rationale, the start and end dates, the adjusted bonding capacity that is being sought, and whether it's being tied to a specific authorization. Lisa, do you have anything to add to that? Or?
Well, all of these requirements are ones that you've seen if you were participating in the last bonding capacity waiver. So we'd like to stop for just a moment and see if there are questions in the interim. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Would the chair like to call on persons, or would you like me to do it?
Go ahead.
Norma Martinez, hi.
Yes, ma'am.
Something caught my ear, and that's...
What was, I would like to have the presentation made in its entirety, and then have public comments.
Okay.
Of course. Okay, moving on. In the interest of time, page 3, we've set forth a timeline for activities to pursue the waiver application. The key goal, the direction from the district and the board was to have the waiver application heard at the first possible meeting of the State Board of Education, which will be September 3rd and 4th. So that's sort of the earliest opportunity for the State Board to consider the waiver application. All of this will be in connection, in part, with Measure H, of course, and it's conditioned on Measure H actually passing. So I'd be happy to answer questions about the timeline, but at the end as well. Thank you. Moving on page 4, just a little bit about what the district intends to do in connection with Measure H. If Measure H is approved by voters this June, the district would need a waiver of its statutory bonding capacity to be able to access the authorized bond dollars. So without that waiver, they wouldn't actually be able to access those dollars. So a bonding capacity waiver of 5% of assessed value for Measure H would be consistent with the prior waivers that are in place now for 2010 Measure D and 2012 Measure E. So that, at the end, I highlight that's what we're going to be seeking. That's what the district will be seeking for Measure H, to line all of those up. Here below is a table just giving you a snapshot of what the district's bonding remaining capacity is right now. And you can see here, based on 2013-14 data, we've outlined the AV, then the bonding capacity at 5%, and then the bonds that are already been issued, and the remaining capacity is $211 million. And with AV growth, if AV growth occurs, that number will go up based on the amount of that growth and as bonds are paid off. And of course, then if additional bonds are issued, that number will decline. Moving on page, the next page, page 5, the chart below shows expected growth in the district's bonding capacity, assuming, this is with an assumption of 4% per year of annual AV growth, assessed valuation growth, as well as a projection or an estimate of future principal amount of bonds that would be outstanding based on a program of additional bond issuance, and I have that table on the next page. So you can see sort of the bonding capacity at 4% growth in the green line, and the outstanding principal just falling below that, and the obvious need for the bonding capacity waiver in order to be able to issue those additional bonds. So based on ongoing bonding capacity needs, the district plans to submit a bonding capacity waiver at 5% through the year 2025, or a bonding capacity waiver application. And I'm on to my last two slides, page 6. Just a comment to ensure that there is consistency across all the measures. The waiver will request terms that apply to all the measures with outstanding authorization. So we want to line them all up at 5% to 2025. And that's the intent. Here's a table with some projections on how much might be issued under the different measures over time if the waiver application is granted. And then finally, just a summary of the key points. Again, the district intends to submit this bonding capacity application for Measure H, targeting 5% of assessed valuation through 2025. And then they're also going to request consistent terms with respect to the other measures, in particular 05 Measure J, extending that term through 2025 and increasing it up to the 5% number. For 2010 Measure D, extending that to 2025. With 2012 Measure E, there would be no change in the waiver terms. And then for 2014 Measure H, if passed, we would get a new waiver at 5% through 2025. On June 11th, the Board of Education will conduct a public hearing and consider a resolution authorizing the waiver application. Thank you for your attention.
Members of the public who would like to comment on this?
Can you give us the legal authority that requires the CBOC to...
Can we have a name, please?
Anton Young here. I'm not aware of any legal requirement. Can you give me the site?
Madam Chairman, did you wish us to answer questions from the
Please
public?
answer questions. Yes.
Yes. Well, the provisions in the state law governing how the waiver process is handled that were cited in the first couple of slides, those require the state board to have a set of regulations. As part of the state board regulations, they require a district, before it submits an application, to consult with advisory committees. And in the context of a bonding capacity waiver, this is the correct committee. And the forms of the State Board of Education further ask that the district report any comments or objections on the part of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee as part of the waiver application.
But the regulations do not require a CBOC. It requires the community organizations.
It requires advisory committees,
Right.
and
It
this
doesn't
is the
specify CBOC.
Right.
Is that
No,
correct?
it does not. It does not.
Right. But your slide said it does.